What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Thursday, July 30th. We're getting closer to football happening, we think. It looks like it's going to happen. And to talk about some defenses, some breakout defenses, the man who I believe has correctly nailed multiple breakout defenses over the last few years, Bryant McFadden. BMac, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Will? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Let's see, 2 years ago you had the Bears before they even traded for Khalil Mack. I don't remember who you had last year, but I want to say it was the Titans.
I think it was the Titans, yes.
Or maybe even the Steelers. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, you know, every year I'm picking the Steelers, but I was really hyped about the Titans defense. They didn't give the same production the Bears defense gave us 2 years ago, but they were still a real good unit. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And by the way, so people know, there's just 1 day left to vote for us on the People's Choice Podcast Awards. You can go to the link in the description of this podcast, click through, log in. Like, you just basically I don't think you have to create a username. Just do your name, email address. You don't have to verify anything. You hit submit. It'll take you immediately to the voting. Select People's Choice Award, drop down to Pick Six, and then Sports Award, drop down to Pick Six. Vote for us, please. We are trying to win a pizza party. You can also watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/pick6. If you listen to this show and like this show at all, just go to youtube.com/pick6. You'll be logged into Google, because everybody's logged into Google, and Google tracks every single move that you make in your entire life. And there's nothing you can do about it. And then hit the subscribe button. So you won't even have to worry about it. These are easy things you can do to help us out if you listen to this podcast. Okay, let's talk first about a defensive player who made news late on Tuesday night, the Chargers announced that they were signing Joey Bosa to a huge contract extension, 5-year extension worth $135 million with $102 million guaranteed. By the way, we'll talk breakout defenses after Bosa. But the thing with Bosa, BMac, he reported to camp to the Chargers at like 8 p.m., which is like he had 5 minutes to go before he was going to lose an accrued season, which tells you that this negotiation probably came down to the last minute. And finally, they're like, look, Joey, we got it done. You can go to camp. Don't, hose yourself over in the setup. They can fine you. You can lose the accrued season, et cetera, et cetera. Go in. Let's get to camp. You got paid. And to be perfectly frank, this is kind of an easy contract for me. I'll give Joey Bosa whatever he wants because I think he's one of the 5 best defensive players in football.
Yeah, and financially, it makes a lot of sense as well. The highest paid player on that team from last year is no longer there in Phillip Rivers, your beloved NC State Wolfpack player, former player. Remember, He's no longer there. He's in Indianapolis. You didn't pay Melvin Gordon, so clearly the funds were available to be able to give Joey this big deal, deserving deal. I mean, just a week ago, we saw Myles Garrett, reset the defensive market financially, getting $25 million per year. They were able to top that, adding $2 more million to Joey Bosa. Now he's getting $27 million per year. That's a premium position because of what they do. They chase down the most expensive position in the National Football League in the quarterback position, right? We know how important quarterbacks are, especially in that division, the AFC West. They're chasing the best that's in the league right now. Twice a year, they see him in Pat Mahomes. You can't put pressure on these quarterbacks, especially a guy like Pat Mahomes. You stand no chance. So everything about this deal made sense from the football standpoint and the financial standpoint as well.
Yeah, it looked like – so guaranteed at signing, and I'm using these numbers from –
78.
78 point – so it's just 78 even $million fully guaranteed at signing. Are you surprised that a team like the Chargers – they're moving to a big new stadium, but they're sort of desperate to sell tickets. They don't have a big fan base out in Los Angeles because they just recently left from San Diego. They just lost Phillip Rivers. They're going all in on Tyrod Taylor and then, of course, Justin Herbert after that. Are you surprised in the middle of a pandemic that they're willing to fully guarantee $78 million to Joey Bosa?
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I don't know exactly what Myles Garrett got to sign. I think he got like around 50 million.
It's 50 million at signing.
At signing, yeah. So what they needed to do was to make Joey and his camp comfortable. They needed to trump everything that Myles Garrett just did with his contract negotiations with the Browns, and they were able to do so. So yes, they basically went over Myles Garrett's total contract. They went over Myles Garrett guaranteed contract, and they went over his guaranteed at signing contract. And it makes sense. They're not really paying a lot of big-name players. Keenan Allen is getting paid pretty well. Melvin.
He's due up in a year. Like, they have a bunch of guys whose contracts are coming up, and Joey Bosa is 25 years old and one of the best pass rushers in the league already. It almost makes you look at the Myles Garrett deal, and you have to think that Myles Garrett's people knew that Bosa was working a deal too. You know, so like the Browns, I mean, or the Browns knew that Joey Bosa was going to get a contract too. So if the Browns wait and don't sign Myles Garrett and Joey Bosa signs this deal, Myles Garrett is going to want more than what Joey Bosa got. Now, all of a sudden, the Myles Garrett deal, to me, looks like it makes a lot more sense in terms of how it's structured and what they gave him, because they knew this Bosa deal was coming down the pipe and they wanted to lock him up before, you know, because then you go to the season and Myles Garrett's like, well, I'm just going to play out this year, and then I'm going to demand way more than, or at least more than what Joey Bosa got. So I think the Browns win on this Bosa deal, because if they wait, Garrett gets more than Bosa and vice versa, I think, right?
Yeah, it's always the next man up mentality, especially if you consider an elite player. And both players are considered, you know, top tier guys in my opinion at their position. And I think this was very huge for the Browns to do as well, because I can't remember the last first round selection the Browns were able to lock up.
Maybe Brady,
right? Think about that. Think about all the number one selected players the Browns have drafted over the last few years before Myles Garrett. Probably didn't get a chance to see a second contract with that said organization in Cleveland.
Okay, so
think about that.
No, I'm with you. I'm trying to think of the last one was. So 2019, they didn't have one. Wouldn't be eligible anyway. 2018, Baker Mayfield, Denzel Ward, not I guess they are they eligible? No, they're eligible next offseason because Baker's only
next offseason.
Myles Garrett, 2017. Yep. Corey Coleman, nope. Andy Shelton, nope. Justin Gilbert, Johnny Manziel, nope. Markevious Mingo, nope. Trent Richardson, Brandon Whedon, no. Phil Taylor, no. Did Joe Hayden get a contract from the Browns? He did, right?
He did.
All right, so 2010 was the last time the Browns had a first-round pick make it to their second contract. And before that, they had Alex Mack in 2009 and Joe Thomas in 2007. Brady Quinn was also drafted in 2007.
And you know what? The unique thing about that stat as well, a lot of the names you mentioned, Will, didn't even get a chance to fulfill that rookie contract.
Nah. Most of them were cut or traded. Yeah.
Yeah, cut or traded.
That's how you end up being terrible for like 5 to 10 years. I mean, you
talk the ideal recipe to be bad. That's how you be bad.
Yeah. All right. That is a fantastic stat. The Chargers have been better at it. So Joey Bosa was drafted, was it 3rd overall, and then Ramsey 4 and Zeke 5. Is that right? Or is it the other way around? Anyway, whatever. Joey Bosa was 3rd overall in the 2016 NFL draft when the Chargers were still in San Diego. He has 40 sacks in 4 years. Has only played 2 full seasons. He held out his rookie year waiting for money, and then suffered injuries in 2018. But man, I mean, when he's healthy, 12 and a half and 11 and a half sacks, tons of quarterback hits, 31 last year, 18 tackles for loss last year, 67 total tackles, had a forced fumble. He's just a pure pass rusher. And I remember coming into the draft and coming out of college in Ohio State, people sort of complain that Joey Bosa they're like, oh, you know, he's got a very high floor, but I don't know if he's got a high ceiling. That's crazy talk. Like, this guy is still just scratching the surface of what he can do. Like, I think he and Myles Garrett are both fully capable of putting together a defensive player of the year campaign in 2020 if we get a full season. And if that happens, and this contract is not going to look like a steal, but it's going to look like a really good value. And I think that the Chargers are smart to go ahead and pay Bosa now. And Bosa, I would guess, was probably willing to hold out heading into his 5th-year option because that whole family's like very stubborn about contracts.
Yeah, and they know their worth, right? Yeah. Joey had all the leverage coming into his 5th year. Clearly, you know, he's a top-tier player at his position, plays a premium position. And like I said, when you moved on from Phillip Rivers, who was getting $20+ million per year, the funds were available. So I love their defense. I think one thing that I hope we can see from the LA Chargers this year, Will, is for them to be able to make it out of camp healthy
Oh my
I
God.
mean, it seems like every year they have an unpredictable injury to a key player going into the season. It was Derwin James last year. The year before that, I think it was Hunter Henry. They have been so unlucky when it comes to going into the season healthy.
Yeah.
So they got to find a way just to be able to.
Unlucky. Or they need to
Unlucky.
fix or somebody like revamp the training staff. And I don't want to crap on a doctor who works for a team, but I'll bet you any amount of money that the Redskins have less injuries this year than they have the last 5 years because they totally redid their training staff. Now this is a weird year, so maybe that's a bad bet to make. But I would think that if the Chargers rebooted their training staff, they would be. They're just always hurt. Always. There's
always.
A star who's hurt.
Going into the season.
Yeah,
going into
crazy.
the season. And that's why we've seen so many slow starts from the Charger camp, because a lot of the times when they go into the season, they're missing a key player. So defensively, that's what they're going to, and they had on another reason why this deal with Joey Bosa makes sense. We don't know exactly how the offense will look. We know Tyrod Taylor, I expect for him to be the week 1 starter, but defensively is what they will have to hang their hat on, and being able to have a guy like Joey Bosa. Don't forget about Melvin Ingram, right? Melvin Ingram does a great job getting to the quarterback. They also added Linval Joseph. I love that signing. That's a huge signing. He's a every down type of defensive tackle. He's a quality run stuffer, and they had issues stopping the run over the last few years in the defense. So I love that signing as well. Defense is going to be the key for that team to be successful, and they've done a great job going into this season signing up their best player.
Could the Chargers be a breakout defense?
Ooh, that's what you call a tease.
That is a tease, BMac. You're right. We'll tell you after the break. Okay, so we mentioned the breakout defensive teams. I think I don't know what that was. I think, did the Chargers qualify as a breakout defensive team potentially?
They could.
It's hard, man, when you look at so for instance, we don't want to pick the 49ers. The 49ers would have been a breakout team last year because they took a huge step forward, but you can't pick the 49ers, Patriots. I don't think you pick the Steelers or the Bills.
Steelers, the Ravens.
Yeah. Maybe I think the Chargers could. I think the Chargers could potentially be the best defense in football, and if that were to happen, then it would be a breakout. But if they're just a top 10 defense, I don't think that would qualify as a breakout.
I agree. I like the Chargers. I think they will be better than what they were last year, especially if they're healthy. I remember they didn't have Derwin James to start the season off last year, so that was a big minus when it comes to production. And now they added Linval Joseph. Don't forget Chris Harris Jr. So I like the Chargers to have a real nice, stout defense, but I'm not quite ready to put them in that category to be my breakout candidate.
Okay. I will take the Chargers, just to finish the segue. I will take the Chargers as a breakout candidate because I think that when you look at what they have put together with this team, and you mentioned Derwin James, that's critical. Like losing Derwin James last year at the beginning of the season completely disrupted what they wanted to do. And
no question.
That defense is built around Derwin James. That's all Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Media said. He thinks if you put all the safeties, every single safety in the NFL in a draft, that Derwin James would be the number 1 guy on the board for all 32 teams. That's a pretty bold statement, and I would guess the Minka guy is going to disagree here, but I'm with DJ on that one. Like I think when you look at Derwin James and what he's able. Oh, actually, although I guess Derwin's an FSU guy, so tough for you here. What do you do? What do you got, Minka?
I mean, it's not tough for me. I seen Derwin James as a true freshman step on the football field and dominate.
Freshman season at FSU was absolutely ridiculous. Like he did it all. He can play everywhere. He like if you lined him up at defensive end for the entire season, he'd have 12 sacks. Like he just.
I remember I had a conversation with Mike Tomlin after Derwin James' freshman season, and I was in Pittsburgh. He basically said Derwin will have to play another down, and he should be a top 10 pick.
And he fell in the draft somehow.
How is that
crazy
possible?
Thing in the world?
One thing that I love about Derwin and that argument, that statement you said Daniel Jeremiah came out with as far as grouping all the safety positions, all the safeties, right? The thing that I love about Derwin, he is a dog. He is the guy you want to go in a bar fight with. You're coming out on top with him. He loves the game. Secondly, he loves the game like no other. He's passionate about the game and his effort. He plays with a relentless style. And it doesn't matter where you line him up on the football field, he is going to make plays, and he is so smart. He is a savvy player, so he has the above-the-shoulder game, right? Athletically, he's he's a freak at the safety position, and he's a guy that has that old man Mike Tyson mentality. Like, I'm walking in the ring, I'm not saying anything, I'm punching you in the mouth.
Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So his rookie season, he had 105 total tackles, 3.5 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, 13 passes defense, 3 interceptions, and somehow didn't force a fumble. But, I mean, like, the guy, he packs the stat sheet. And he does it in a way that impacts the game. So when I look at this Chargers defense, and the reason I think they could be the best defense in football, so you lock up Joey Bosa. There's no concerns about him holding out or missing time because he wants a new deal. He's locked in. You get 16 games from him. That's huge. Melvin Ingram, as you point out, across the other way, he's in a contract year. So I think you'll see a motivated Melvin Ingram rolling into 2020 because he wants to get paid, and it's his last bite at the apple, probably at 31, to get a legitimate contract. On the interior, I agree with you. Linval Joseph, a huge ad because it takes the pressure off of last year's first-round pick, Jerry Tillery, and 2018 third-round pick, Justin Jones. They don't have to be the guy in the middle. Now you have a nice rotation of 3 guys that you can bring in there to try and, soak up bodies and get single teams for Bosa and Ingram. In the secondary, I mean, Derwin, we talked about at length. Like, he's just a monster. And you have Casey Hayward, who ended up being a steal of a signing by Tom Telesco in free agency. Chris Harris, who they got in free agency this year, is going to be motivated. And you have Desmond King, who can rotate around and play nickel and can play safety. Harris can play safety. Like, there's a lot of malleability in that secondary. And then adding Kenneth Murray. I know they gave up a lot to trade up to get him in the first round, but now you have a true stud middle linebacker that is what this defense has missed for the last few years. And if they stay healthy, BMac, I really think that they have enough talent at every level to be a dominant defense.
I don't disagree with you at all. I don't disagree with you all because they have their best argument is they can get at the passer, right?
Yeah.
And I can tell you this much. One name that I'm glad you mentioned his name. If Tillery can just find the light just a little bit, if he could he's a massive individual. If he can find the light, and also they're playing a legit 4-3 scheme this year. So these guys are putting their hand in the dirt and they're digging their cleats in the turf and they're firing off. So that's the first element you need to be able to have. Can you put pressure on these quarterbacks? Secondly, can you cover? Do you have guys in the back end that could cover? The front and the first level guys and the third level guys work hand in hand. They put pressure on the quarterback. You got guys that can cover. Then, secondly, the second level guys, I think that's the biggest question mark I have with the Chargers defense, the second level guys, which is the backers, right? Kenneth Murray is a dog. Kenneth Murray, man, in Oklahoma, all he did was tackle. He flew around. You always saw number 9 in a highlight or around the football. He loves the game as well. So I'm right there with you. I think the Chargers, man, I want to see them healthy. I just want to see the Chargers get out of camp healthy. And if they can, man, they're going to raise a lot of eyebrows, not just in the division of the National Football League.
325 total tackles for Kenneth Murray, 36.5 tackles for loss over his 3 years at Oklahoma, 9.5 sacks too. So, I mean, like, he's a little more versatile maybe. And remember, you're talking, I think total games was 40 total games. So, I mean, this guy, you're right, tackle machine. If they're healthy, I really think they have a chance to be the top defense in football. But I don't want to act like it's a huge breakout because I do think the expectation for this team should be a top 10 defense. Like,
I agree.
If you're a bottom half of the league defense, that is a disastrous season. You've got some teams, a team in the same division actually, that could be a breakout in the Denver Broncos. All right, so is this your 2020 Bears pick? Like BMac special, this team makes a huge leap forward pick? Okay.
This is my 2020 Bears pick, and what Will is referencing is 2 years ago I picked the Bears to have a breakout year before they even traded for Khalil Mack, and we saw how that 2018 season came to light for Chicago. But the Denver Broncos, they're my number one breakout defense.
By the way, same same guy coordinating the defenses.
Vic Fangio. Of course, he's a head coach, but he's still hand in hand with the defense. And let me start off with this. The reason why I think the Denver Broncos will have a huge breakout defensive year is when you look at how they finished the season last year. They played some of their best football in their final 6 ball games, led by Von Miller. In that 6-game stretch, I think he had 4 sacks. So they finally understood what was expected of them as a defense, playing in a new system, a new style of play, being able to get the chemistry together. They finished the season playing real good football. Secondly, I think that momentum will carry into this season. But when you also add a healthy Bradley Chubb, pair him up with Von Miller, people are sleeping on Von Miller. He can still dominate a ball game. He still can dominate a season, but now he has the ultimate healthy Robin. Von Miller is Batman, Chubb is Robin, and those 2 guys go hand in hand. So remember I talked about the first element you need to have a successful defense. Can you put pressure on the quarterback?
Yep.
Those 2 guys can get it done. Those 2 guys can arguably be the best duo of pass rushers in the National Football League.
Let me ask you this. Would you rather have Von Miller and just for 2020, we'll say, Von Miller and Bradley Chubb or Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram? It's close. Those are. I would say that's. I mean, is there a better pass rushing duo out there that we're missing?
I mean, you could. The San Francisco got Bosa and D Ford, or whoever. Yeah. That's a tough one right there. Who would I think rather
for
have?
2020, I'd probably go Bosa and Ingram, but I wouldn't be surprised if only because Chubb's coming off the ACL and but I'll tell you, I think you're right. Like Von Miller, Ryan Wilson did his top 10 pass rusher list. Yeah. I think Von Miller
he left Von off.
He left Von off.
He did. I tried to jump on Ryan about that too.
Yeah, you destroyed some people with those comebacks. But I think that I think Von this is a good chance that Von's in his last year with the Broncos if he doesn't have a great season because of the way that his contract sets up, and he has 2 years left, but they can get out of it after this year. So I think he's going to be really motivated to come out and have a big season.
No question. You just saw what Bosa and Myles Garrett got, so he's going to be motivated. So, and I think based on what happened with Chubb last year, I think I second that with you, Will. I think I would take that duo out in La La Land with the Chargers. But these 2 guys are not a pushover at all, right? Chubb and Von Miller. And then secondly, being able to add, they basically gave the Tennessee Titans a Snickers bar to acquire Jarrell Casey,
who might be the most underrated defensive player in the last 10 years. He's unbelievable.
I'm like, who okayed that deal for Tennessee to get what they got in return to ship Jarrell Casey off to Denver, who's going to be a huge addition as well. Similar. The thing I love about your team and my team, the similarities are there, right? LeVar Joseph,
a piece in the middle who can make those pass rushers even better because they free up the bodies, right?
So Jarrell Casey is added to the forefront on that front, which will be huge, especially for guys like Von Miller and Chubb. And then you look at the secondary. Listen, Kareem Jackson.
Bouye for peanuts too. AJ Bouye. It's crazy.
AJ Bouye, you add him. He's going to be motivated. He still can play. Kareem Jackson has really excelled at the safety position. Isaac Yiadom, talented guy. I think having a veteran presence opposite of him and AJ Bouye could help him. But I really love Justin Simmons. Yeah. Justin Simmons can go. He can go. I mean, he is an outstanding defender. It's not like he's a cover guy. It's not like he's a box guy. He can do it all, and he's been able to do so over the last 3 years. I just don't know why they didn't go out and give him a nice big-time contract. But you better believe he's more motivated than ever because they tagged him, so he's going to put up numbers. And one of the unsung heroes for this team potentially, Bryce Callahan.
That's who I was just looking up. Did he get hurt? He got hurt before the season, right? He never played.
Yes.
And so in the Fangio system, obviously you want to have pass rushers, and pass rushers are key, but the safety and the nickel position feel like they are really important for how Fangio wants to operate. And Callahan was his guy in Chicago.
And then brought him with him, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, he brought him over from Chicago, paid him real nicely as a nickel guy, but just he was unlucky when it came to the injury standpoint. So he could be an unsung hero for their defense, but I love their defense, you know, and I have the concerns about the second level guy, the backers, the interior backers. But outside of that, man, because you got guys like Von Miller, who's motivated, Bradley Chubb, and we saw what kind of havoc those two guys did cause when they broke the healthy, right? So,
and you know what was crazy is last year, I think it was like 5 games in, the Broncos didn't, or like 4 games in, the Broncos didn't have a single sack. And it was just sort of a weird thing that happened. Like, you know, you get out to a faster start, you're used to Fangio's system in year 2. Year 2 is key, I think, as well. Like, you don't just pick up a total wholesale defensive change like Fangio's overnight, right? Like, it
took time. And that's why you remember the first thing I said about this defense, why I'm hyped. The final 6 ball games is where you really started to see things show up. And I think that momentum and knowing and understanding what they're supposed to do will carry into this season, especially with how abnormal this season has been. So that's my number 1 breakout defense.
Right.
My number 2.
Way, I agree with you just real quickly. I agree with you completely that there are a lot, and maybe the schemes are different and all that, but Denver and Los Angeles, the Chargers, like just the setup, like you have questions about the linebacker spots, but the pass rush is great and the secondary is loaded. Like, I mean, you know, it's clear that those two teams have a lot of interest in trying to slow down the Kansas City Chiefs, as they should, right? I mean,
as they should,
right?
If you want to be relevant, you got to be relevant in your division.
Absolutely. All right, so your number 2 breakout defense.
Let's go to Indianapolis.
I love it because
Indianapolis Colts. Yes, for multiple reasons. Number 1, let's start off with the personnel on the defense, especially with, you know, what they have on the front. Remember, my number 1 requirement for potential good defense is, can they put pressure on the quarterback, right? That left side of that defensive line is going to be hell. DeForest Buckner, Justin Houston. Justin Houston, man, can still go, right? And you add DeForest Buckner to that forefront, to that front, they will make everybody else better. So I love that addition, adding DeForest Buckner to the forefront. They gave a first rounder for him, which makes sense because clearly
13th overall to the 49ers. But I mean, that's the price for doing business for getting DeForest Buckner.
Exactly. So that makes sense. Darius Leonard, man, listen, he does everything, right? Everything. Sacking the quarterback, creating turnovers, and tackling. He's just a football player. He's very, very instinctive. He's still continuing to grow and develop. He's getting ready to hit his peak like years, and I think he's going to have a huge year once again, especially if he's healthy. Anthony Walker.
By the way, Darius Leonard, I love this. Like, he didn't I guess he made the Pro Bowl last year, but he had a down season, 121 tackles, 5 sacks, 7 passes defense, 2 forced fumbles, 5 interceptions, and he did that in 13 games. Like, that was a down year for Darius Leonard. What are we doing?
Man, people keep sleeping on Leonard. They slept on him his rookie year. Then they said, well, he had a down year. And those numbers you just read off to us, that's a great year. People keep sleeping on Darius Leonard like he's a very, very comfortable mattress. No, he's not a comfortable mattress. It's uncomfortable to sleep on that mattress. Stop sleeping on him.
And I think a guy like Darius Leonard, too, you go to South Carolina State. You know, the Colts were criticized when they took him in the 2nd round, 36 overall. Like, people were like, you know, you take a South Carolina State linebacker, 36 overall, it's kind of crazy. Like, Darius Leonard is a guy that's always going to have a chip on his shoulder. Like, I think if you go to South Carolina State and play your whole college career there, you never forget the fact that you never, like, he wasn't a big time recruit, obviously, because he went to South Carolina State. So I think that chip is going to be there. If he plays 16 games, he should be an all-pro defensive player of the year candidate.
Listen, I'm a part of multiple fantasy leagues just like you are, and there's a league that requires you to get a defensive specialist. Sure. That's the guy I go get almost every year because he put up numbers, you know what I mean, based on the numbers you just read up to us. And Anthony Walker, he can go as well. He's a great counterpartner for Darius Leonard at the linebacker position for that team. So he's a tackling machine. He's a guy that loves the game of football. No one is really talking about his name, but he played a big time, especially in the absence of Leonard when he was injured last year. The name that I want to see show up for this defense, especially in the secondary,
Malik Hooker?
Malik Hooker.
Yes.
It's time for Malik Hooker to go. His rookie year, I mean, we thought, whoa, he could be the next great safety, right?
Ed Reed.
Injuries.
Yes,
injuries kind of hampered him, never kind of got back into that flow of how he was playing his rookie year. This has to be the year for Jordan Brand player Malik Hooker. It's time for him to show up and show out throughout the entire year. Give us the same flashes you showed your rookie campaign, and I think he would solidify that defense and the expectations I have for them. And secondly, outside of the roster, while I'm really hyped about this defense, their division, right? In their division, the AFC South, it's not like they're playing against a lot of explosive offenses. You got Jacksonville rebuilding. You got Tennessee, Derrick Henry. Then you got Houston, Deshaun Watson. That's
just
probably
traded DeAndre Hopkins too.
Yeah, so that's probably the closest thing to an explosive-like offense in their division based on the personalities and the DNA of the other offenses I mentioned. And there lies an opportunity for this defense to put up major numbers in the stat sheet throughout the season, because those offenses they will see twice a year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think and I don't want to get too hyped up on the Colts because, I like the Phillip Rivers thing. Now I'm a Colts fan.
You have a soft spot for Phillip Rivers his entire playing career.
Dude, everybody in Raleigh was a Chargers fan, and now everybody in Raleigh is a Colts fan because it's we're not really into the Panthers. We're just going to
why don't you look over your right shoulder? What is that behind you on your right shoulder?
Yeah, that is my right shoulder. Yeah, it's a giant NC State. No. I mean, look, I'm a Phil guy. I think somewhere, in fact, there's a Phillip Rivers plush toy.
You got to get the new one. You got to get the new one.
I know. I gotta get cool. My wife got me that for Christmas one year, or my birthday one year. But I think and the other thing too about this Colts team that I think people are sort of forgetting is that with their offensive line, with Quentin Nelson, Anthony Costanzo, Braden Smith, Phillip Rivers comes in. They're not going to try and run this high octane offense, in my opinion.
There's no need to.
I think it will be a run-heavy team. They drafted Jonathan Taylor in the second round, Marlon Mack in the final year of his deal. Naeem Hines going to catch a bunch of short passes, I think. And if you do that, you can put your defense in an advantageous position. The Matt Eberflus, by the way, came over from Dallas when Josh McDaniels was hired by the Colts. He's Josh McDaniels' DC. McDaniels loved him. And when McDaniels bailed, Eberflus could have left. And he decided to stick it out, and he stayed in Indy, and he's been the coordinator now, I think, 3 years, because that's how long Frank Reich's been. Yeah, 3 years. And this defense has just gotten he's made a lot with kind of a little, some younger pieces, and he's gotten the most out of Leonard, obviously. But I think that addition of DeForest Buckner, now you could just see this defense just take off. And Justin Houston maybe has a rejuvenated season. You'd like to see a little bit more off the edge, I think, in terms of pass rushers to consider this like an elite defense. But I think you're right. It has a sleeper chance of making elite because there's elite talent at every level.
And a year ago, it didn't play bad football. I think they finished number 16th in total yards allowed, which is not bad.
Average defense.
I would say they have a better roster coming into this season than what they did last year with that unit that finished 16th. Yep. So for me, it's not, when I say my expectations for the Colts, I'm not expecting them to be a top 3 or top 5 unit, but I think they can get in that top 10. You know what I mean? They could potentially be right outside the top 10, 11, and 12.
I think they have a chance to be top 5. I think it would be unlikely. If they're top 5, this is a Super Bowl contender. I'll tell you that much. But, to your point, so you have guys like Bobby Okereke, who's, now in his second year. Rock Ya-Sin, now in his second year.
They also added Xavier Rhodes.
Yeah, and Rhodes wasn't good last year. We don't need to sugarcoat it, but he is a Pro Bowl caliber player. And if he can get back to playing the way he played early on in Minnesota, the Kari Willis is a second-year player. There's a lot of young talent on this roster, which I think leads you to believe that maybe a breakout could come. I was trying to look at the teams and see who else would really qualify. I didn't honestly see a ton of other sleepers. I love the 3 picks we've got here. Would the Buccaneers count as a sleeper who could take a leap forward?
I mean, I think with Tampa, what they did well last year was stop the run.
Stop the run. They were great against stopping the run. So it's they were elite at stopping the run, number 1 against the run, but terrible against the pass.
The concern I have with Tampa, yes, they were terrible against the pass last year. They could be a bit better, but playing against Drew Brees and Matt Ryan twice a year, and you struggled against the pass last year, might not give you an opportunity to jump in that top 12, top 10, top 5 range when you talk about some of the other defenses that we mentioned.
That's a great point. All right, I got a sleeper for a top 10 defense or top 5, top 5 or top 10 defense that I think is the Philadelphia Eagles. They had Darius Slay in the offseason.
Nice
you had
pickup.
Nickel Roby Coleman. So now, like, your secondary is automatically
Should be better.
Has to be better. It was awful.
Has to be better.
And then I think if you get a full breakout season from Derek Barnett, which is sort of like Malik Hooker, I think, were they drafted maybe even back to back? It was those two. So it was those two and Marshawn Lattimore. Whenever everybody took all the wide receivers and the running backs in that 2017 draft, and Lattimore, Barnett, and Malik Hooker all fell down to these teams as good value. Barnett is due for a big breakout season. They have Malik Jackson, Javon Hargrave, and Fletcher Cox on the interior. And then you have Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat. Sweat's a fourth-round pick.
Florida State guy.
Yeah, Florida State guy. Like, I think there's a lot there that could kind of create a defensive line that pops the way it did when they won that Super Bowl in 2017. And if they are that good up front on defense, then that secondary, in my opinion, will be automatically better. So I think sort of a sleeper. They've been there before, but the formula is there for them to replicate the success that we saw previously.
And another one within that division, I just thought about, what about Washington?
Oh, right? That's a good choice. That's a real good choice.
With just the pass rushes alone, right?
Yeah.
The array of pass rushes, I mean, they have the depth. I mean, clearly is going to be a big plus for that defense. And you know, they added Fuller. You know, you got Fuller back, so I think that's a defense that could be one to be reckoned with as well.
No, that's a good point. And Ron Rivera's defense actually, surprisingly, was not. It was like 27th when he got to Carolina. The defense just wasn't that good out of the gate, but they didn't exactly have a ton of players that they were dealing. You know, Charles Johnson was there. They had Greg Hardy. So I mean, they had some pressure up front, but not in the way that like Washington does. Washington has a stacked front with. You start with Chase Young.
San Francisco East.
That's a good point.
San Francisco East.
Like you could see them kind of break out. So Montez Sweat, last year's first round pick. Deron Payne, 2018 first round pick. Jonathan Allen, 2017 first round pick. Chase Young. So on your defensive line, you have 4 consecutive years of
first rounders
for first round picks.
Highly invested players.
And
similar to San Francisco.
I didn't even count Ryan Kerrigan, who was a first-round pick in 2011, which is crazy. And then Matt Ioannidis, who's been great for them, a fifth-round pick in 2016. So if that group can get pressure, yeah. I mean, with Landon Collins and Kendall Fuller on the back end, and you have Thomas Davis, who I know is older, but he knows the system, and that'll be easy to transition. Yeah, I think that's a great call for a sleeper to be a top 10 defense.
One more I want to throw out there. They just were so bad last year. I think they had no other choice but to improve. But I think they will be a pretty good defense, right? That's the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh yeah, I like that call too.
Arizona.
Yeah.
I mean, now they were bad last year, but I can tell you what, Chandler Jones has been doing.
Wait, is this a good time to promote any future endeavors, or is that still under wraps? I don't know.
I think it's still under wraps, but it's coming soon. It's coming soon. But
be on the lookout.
Be on the lookout. No question. No question. Big time announcement. But Will, tell me another player who's been more productive than Chandler Jones in the last 2-3 years. And
he doesn't get the love that he should for the stats he puts up. So you look at the Cardinals. You have Chandler Jones, and they added. I think this is big for Chandler Jones too. You add Jordan Phillips and Corey Peters as
Corey Peters,
in free agency. Now, not like huge signings, but this is quintessential Steve Keim to get sort of a veteran, and you get the most out of him on the defensive side of the ball. And you can, again, you lock up some blockers. You're going to slow down the run. You're going to let Chandler Jones cut loose off the edge. They get Isaiah Simmons with the first-round pick. I think people are worried that he'll be Deion Buchanan 2.0 or something like that. I don't think so. I think he's so versatile. He's going to move around. Devondre Campbell, Jordan Hicks they added.
I love Campbell too. Jordan Hicks balled.
Yeah.
He played some real good football last year.
Balls out, Pat P., Buda Baker, and Byron Murphy, they could take a step forward in his second year.
Buda Baker?
Buda
Baker reminds me of Bob Sanders. He might not be as explosive as Bob Sanders, but the way he tackles, the physical nature he plays with reminds me a lot of Bob Sanders.
I like that. I mean, you got two great. These are four total. I brought like one to the table, and then the Eagles. But I like these Washington and Arizona deep sleepers because
deep sleepers.
And the thing is, like, if either one of these in this weird season, with now we add an extra playoff spot. I mean, if either one of these, and both guys we have second year quarterbacks. Like, if either of these defenses take a leap forward and the quarterback takes a small step forward. I mean, Washington could make a play. I know nobody thinks Washington can be a playoff team, but it's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
It's unlikely. In that division,
it could. In that division, that's the thing. That division could potentially be wide open outside of, who knows what happened with Dallas.
Maybe Dallas struggles to adapt, and Philadelphia didn't solve the wideout or the cornerback problem. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Washington would have an easier task in the division than Arizona. But Arizona has a better makeup on the offense right now.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have a better offense on paper. But it's going to be a fight week in and week out in the NFC West, and I can't wait to see it. But Kyler Murray, man, I was hyped about how he played last year. I think this year, adding DeAndre Hopkins and some of the other pieces they added, man, if the offensive line can just get a tad bit better, that offense is going to be high-powered as well. So, but yeah, I think Washington's defense and Arizona defense could be en route to do some real good things.
All right, so sleepers to be top half of the league, maybe top 10, and then Denver and Indianapolis we think could take
huge
forward. Bryant McFadden at BMac_Sports Talk on Twitter. Watch him on CBS Sports HQ, and again, as we tease, be on the lookout for future endeavors. BMac, it's always fun to chat with you, buddy.
Yes, sir. Will, thank you. Be safe.